Order in the sanctuary. I couldn't cope with the wig, but just call me Ruth. And we'll now enter into our time of worship. Gather we now into this space, this time when the wheel turns and the veil shatters. Gather we now to remember, to grieve, to prophecy, to complete our harvest before the long darkness comes. Gather we now to tell the old stories and sing the old songs, to be as we have always been, the voice of our people eternal. Gather we now to celebrate that which was, that which is, and that which will be. Gather we now, as we always have done, united by story and bound by love. Those opening words by Andrea Hawkins Camper. And now we have someone to lead us, and really more of a chant, right? Sort of. Our soul singers.
We'd like you all to sing with us. And the words are going to be, I hope, Dustin, can you get the words up? Okay, they're going to be on the screen. But while we're waiting for that, I'll do call and response so that you can learn the song a little bit. It's the blood of the ancients that runs through our veins. Your turn. It's the blood of the ancients that runs through our veins, and the forms pass, but the circle of life remains. And the forms pass, but the circle of life remains. Sounds good. Let's try that from the beginning. It's the blood of the ancients that runs through our veins, and the forms pass, but the circle of life remains. Good, let's do the second verse. My turn first. It's the hope of a new world that runs through our veins. Yours. It's the hope of a new world that runs through our veins, and the old world's past, and the future is in our hands. And the old world's past, and the future is in our hands. All right, we're ready to go. So we will sing it, and I will play the drum.
Would you rise, please, and body our spirit for the lighting of the chalice and the doxology. Our chalice lighters come forward.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon the world. Please be seated. Good morning and welcome. I'm the Reverend Susan Milner. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and it is my honor and my pleasure to serve as interim minister to this historic congregation. We gratefully acknowledge the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today. We commit to support and honor their history and culture. We want to warmly welcome all of you, whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, whatever species you are, from whatever planet you hail, natural or supernatural, or however you appear today. For this 1 hour, you are part of this congregation and you are welcome. We invite visitors to come to our pumpkin party with food and fun afterwards. If you are a visitor and you're going to get coffee, if you take a red mug, we can welcome you, identify you, and welcome you. But please, everyone, do be aware that there's lots of fun. Out of the corner of my eye, I've been seeing the bouncy house go up out there. Now, adults, restrain yourselves, but anyway, lots of fun after the service. Again, we welcome you to First Parish Church. Rob?
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Halloween, Eve. I'd like to invite any young people to come up close to get a front row seat for today's Magic for All Ages. I see a banana. Bananas are welcome as well. Ballerinas, school buses, Pikachu. Is that Pikachu? No, oh. Kale. And if you would like to sit down, actually, so you can actually see what's going to happen here. Everyone, grab a seat. Hopefully there's room. We've got a lot of you. You and Eli just stay on the end. I'll call you up. Please sit down. Make yourselves comfortable. You and Johanna sit together and I'll call you up, okay? Wow, I see lots of cool costumes. Nice variety. And here comes a Spider-Man. So, you know, as a magician, sometimes I do some scary things. Sawing a person in half is scary. Reading someone's mind is also scary, especially if it's my own. I've been up there. There are a lot of cobwebs. It's kind of like wandering through a haunted house. But sometimes, on a daily basis, I take some risks. Like one time, I counted chickens before they hatched. Somebody said not to do that, but I did it anyway. And another time, I cried over spilled milk. Someone said don't, so I'm proud to say that I did. Well, today, we're going to do something along those lines. It's a little scary or really ill-advised. We're going to mix apples and oranges. I've been told that's a bad idea. But in honor of Halloween, we're not going to mix apples and oranges. We're going to mix apples and pumpkins. Now, in order to do this, some magic is going to happen. I won't tell you what yet, but I'm going to use the help of two folks from the audience, two people of impeccable characters. And I see them coming forward. Johanna, and Eli, would you come up and help, please? Johanna, why don't you stand here and Eli here? And you're going to need your hands. Do you have pockets? I'll take that. Okay. Thank you. I'll get it back to you, okay? Hi, guys. Eli and Johanna, I have here in this bowl, a bowl of apples and pumpkins, and people say don't mix those. It's something that it's an expression people use when they're arguing. They're saying, oh, you're just mixing apples and oranges, and today, apples and pumpkins. But you can see they're kind of artistic. They kind of look nice together. But I've actually arranged them in pairs, and I'm going to distribute them into these cauldrons. Would you please hold up the cauldrons and show everybody that they're empty? Tip it over. Everybody can see like that. Thank you, Eli. No trapdoors or anything like that? Excellent. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to distribute these, but they're in pairs. And just like the ark, 2 by 2. Here's a pair, another pair, another pair, a pair, and finally, a pair. And you see that there's one extra pumpkin left. This is the pretty great pumpkin. Now, some people may say, what's so great about that pumpkin? It's small, and it's just like all the others. But isn't what makes something great or someone great really what's inside? You don't have to be big to be great. And you know who said that? Martin Luther King. He said, you don't have to be big to be great. You don't have to be super smart. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be famous. You only need a heart full of grace and to serve, a soul generated by love. And what he meant by that was you only need to love others and to help those in need and help your community, and you can be great. He said that's the new definition of greatness, and he said it 55 years ago. And sometimes it feels like that definition is still new. Well, today the Pretty Great Pumpkin is going to do a bit of magic, but actually Johanna and Eli are going to make the magic happen. I'm not going to do it, and if it works, all the applause will be for the two of you, okay? So you get to decide how the magic's going to happen. Which one of you would like to end up with the Pretty Great Pumpkin? Decide between you. Eli, you're going to end up with it, but in a magical way. Johanna, would you please take that the pumpkin and put it in your cauldron? Now, step back a little bit away from your cauldrons. And I'm going to step back too, because I'm not doing anything. They are going to be doing the magic. Johanna, come forward and take out the Pretty Great Pumpkin invisibly, if you would. Just mime it. Yep. Don't drop it. Hold it carefully. Eli, get ready to catch. Toss it gently over to Eli. Catch it? Nice catch. Now would you come and set it down gently into your cauldron? Let's see if it worked. Johanna, would you empty the contents of your cauldron into the bowl and do it pair by pair like we did before? A pumpkin and an apple. Another pair. Another pair. And will you show what's in your cauldron? Where'd the extra one go? Where did the Pretty Great Pumpkin go? Eli? Why don't you take this down? I'll hold it for you. And would you show everyone what's in your cauldron? How about that? How is it done? Maybe it's magic. Or maybe two people served us today by helping give us a moment of wonder. Let's have a round of applause for our wonderful volunteers. Great job. Now, I asked Reverend Susan for a little extra time today because, as you know, some of our young people have been learning magic downstairs, and we'd like to share something with you right now that we were learning last week, and we're going to do it for you now. Would our other members who are prepared come up? And line up right up here. Actually, you can step up here so people can see better. Oh, guys. Take this one. Remember to hide that. All right. Okay. A little bit of Halloween magic. You guys ready? Sometimes the world seems to split in two. Terror. We find ourselves wondering what to do. We gather together to make our hearts strong. Because hope, like love, goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Let's have a hand for our magic labbers. Thank you, guys. All right.
So we will sing our young people out. This time of year is a time of transition, and so a bit of a change of tone in our service now. Our reading today is by Maya Angelou, who I seem to keep coming back to this fall, and it's called Late October. Carefully, the leaves of autumn sprinkle down the tinny sound of little dyings, and skies sated of ruddy sunsets, of roseate dawns roil ceaselessly in cobweb grays and turn to black for comfort. Only lovers see the fall, a signal end to endings, a gruffish gesture alerting those who will not be alarmed that we begin to stop in order simply to begin again. In a week that has held so much suffering and been hard for so many, I invite you into a spirit of calm, meditation, and holding life at the center. These words are adapted from Kelly Murphy Mason. In the unity of the Spirit, in the sanctity of this gathering, let us quiet ourselves as we settle into a meditative moment, a time when we can each listen to that still, small voice within. All our souls speak to us if we trust ourselves to hear them. What do they tell us this day, in this very season? Whether our innermost yearnings find voice in a sincere intention, a prayer, a scripture, a profound lament, or sudden insight, we honor those. We stay present to the wisdom that arises within. We welcome whatever arrives, be it bidden or unbidden. We find rest in our calm center, that secure core of our being, which houses our surest sense of the holy. We allow ourselves to know consolation. We grow mindful, ever mindful, not only of ourselves, but also of those dear to us, those here in our midst, those absent today, those held close in memory, those in distant places. And now, feeling ourselves enfolded in loving kindness that is everywhere abiding, let us enter now into the sacred silence. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. What a wonderful embodiment our gathering is this morning of the many kinds of energy and love and service and inspiration and curiosity come together to create a community, to create worship, to create a life together. I am grateful for all that you give in that regard. We are grateful in this meeting house for all that you do to support it in the ministries of this church, and we welcome your generosity. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. My sister and I grew up next door to ghosts. At least that was the rumor. Our mother would not let us trick or treat at our neighbor's house, our next door neighbor's house, but in truth, it was not because she believed in otherworldly spirits. She had heard that on All Hallows Eve, the neighbors dressed as ghosts and ran around their yard calling ancestors, which she feared would frighten us poor kids. Of course, we would have loved to go to their door with our treat bags. Maybe there really were ghosts down by the creek on the other side of their house. Perhaps they could contact spirits, and wouldn't that be both exciting and scary? To my mother's frustration, our most cherished disguises on Halloween were not the fairy tale princess or ballerina outfits that she favored, but the visages of witches, ghosts, and goblins. For us, Halloween was at its best when we wore what we feared, and we wanted that frisson of thrill at the eerie happenings for 2 hours a year with adults safely backing us up. Jerry Hogle, professor emeritus of English at Arizona University and scholar of classic horror literature like Frankenstein, says that we love ghost stories and horror movies, if you do, when we're not actually in danger. In his words, we're in a state of heightened awareness, but we know at the same time that we're safe. We can take pleasure in the endorphins going off like this without being threatened. It's not surprising that old stories and practices showed up in country and land settled by the Irish and the Scots, who brought centuries of Celtic culture with them. And in the ancient Celtic tradition, All Hallows Eve, or Samhain, was the beginning of the darkest part of the year. It was the time when the year was dying. And with leaves falling from tree and mist rising on the waters and harvest time done, for better or worse, people believed that a veil between our world and the world of the departed, that the veil lifted, providing a very brief period of transition between life and death. And during this time, on this evening, when the veil lifted, the spirits of those who had left this life could appear again, just for a while, to those who still lived under the full light of day. Now, understand, encountering those spirits was not without danger, nor was it the distant, easy, innocent thrill of my childhood. The Celts believed that the spirits from the other world could do some harm. They could carry off the living, or they could take revenge for wrongs done to them in this life. And that was why people began to disguise themselves on Halloween. It was for survival. And the logic was simple. If you looked like a ghost, you would not be snatched by a ghost. And indeed, if you were masked, you could mingle freely with the spirits of those who had returned. Now, over time, beliefs evolved and mingled with other religious systems, and revelers became geysers who went from house to house, singing and dancing, sometimes asking for handouts for the poor. And in Scotland, of which Ed reminded us so wonderfully this morning with the bagpipe sound. In Scotland, where guising remained strong, it became trick-or-treating. All the customs of Halloween evolved from ancient traditions that found expression still among the Scots-Irish descendants in this place I clearly came from. We in this culture have diverse beliefs about what happens to us, to the soul, to the spirit, to personal energy after life. For some, it's a deeply religious matter, a matter of doctrine, a matter of conviction. And for others, it's something much less defined, but somehow fascinating. Indeed, there are people, ghost hunters, who set up time-lapse cameras waiting to catch this or that strange happening in this or that haunted place, hoping that technology can prove the existence of spirits. The ironic attempt to capture the supernatural and technology is not the important legacy of our ancient beliefs, however. The real meaning, I believe, is a metaphorical one. Belief in the lifting veil reflects more deeply what we sense and know. Death, however much we fear it, is a part of life. And those we have known and loved or not loved are never simply gone. They revisit us in memory, and part of the spiritual life always is reckoning with that, learning perhaps to welcome it. Whatever our view of the supernatural, however rationalists we are, we live with ghosts. And let me give you an example. When I went to serve as the settled minister at our Unitarian Universalist Church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, many years ago, the dearly loved previous minister had died less than 2 years earlier. Kit was a charismatic minister, the kind of person who radiates unconditional love and draws people to him. The church had exploded in size. And when he died, after 5 years at the age of 45, after a short illness, the congregation was devastated. The grief was so raw that he was like a constant presence in the life of that community. Members created a memorial to him, spreading his words across the walls of the religious education floor. And if that were not indication enough, one day I was greeting people after the service, and I don't know, probably my first year, when a woman came up to me in tears and said, "I'm so excited. I saw Kit's aura behind you in the pulpit today." But you know what? For a while, I felt like I was wearing the mask of their minister, while people around me were looking for the real person behind the guise. I sought advice and counsel and got sympathy from colleagues. I feared I couldn't live up to the past. In a way, I felt haunted. Then one day I was talking by phone to an old friend from my college teaching days, someone who had nothing to do with religion or church at all, really not much use for them. And I explained the situation. "The only advice I can give you," he said, "is to befriend the ghost." To befriend the ghost. It was the best advice I probably ever got in ministry. Not only did I accept that Kit would be a presence among us, but it freed me to ask people questions about his ministries and the magic of those years, and to learn an awful lot about ministry from him, yes, after he was gone. He was not only a ghost, but a teacher and an inspiration. You know, we want losses to be over and done with, and don't get me wrong. We do heal in a way. We move on psychically, psychologically, therapeutically. People move through stages. We reach what people, I think, perhaps erroneously call closure. It's more like moving to a next stage, at least for the moment. That congregation in Pennsylvania moved on. As the ancients knew, however, the veil lifts. It lifts with some regularity, and we encounter both our loss and our love again. That's the point. We encounter our loss and our love, and it's a process as naturally human as anything else. What spiritual wisdom can grant us is accepting that cycle, valuing it. As Rabbi David Wolpe writes, faith teaches us that life will not be easy, but that the difficulties of life yield beauty. I love that. I love also the wise words of the 19th century Rabbi Kotzer, who said, the only whole heart is a broken heart. The only whole heart is a broken heart. The Celts faced death directly. In town after town, village after village, eventually they lit the way from sacred spiritual sites to their homes with torches and bonfires so that the returning souls might more easily find their way. In Wales, the hearth was prepared for the arrival of departed relatives. And throughout different parts of Europe, as the Christian tradition melded the old stories and old ways into their own, people baked soul cakes or soul bread, faithfully shaped by human hands to feed those who would make the long journey between worlds on that cold night. Do any of you remember the souling song, which is etched in my mind by Peter, Paul, and Mary? Soul, soul, for a soul cake, pray, good missus, a soul cake, an apple, a pear, a plum, or cherry, any good thing to make us all merry. What does it mean for us to make soul cakes for our ghost? What does it mean spiritually? Instead of only fearing our loss, which is also natural, and our memories, to accept them, to accept that what was will come back, that the departed resurface, and that the broken heart, even the heart that breaks again and again, is finally the whole heart. The spiritual response, I believe, is to light the way and remember. And if what comes back to you is unwelcome, if it's a painful presence, then stare it down yet again. Just don't let it haunt you and restrict your life or your heart. But if it was a person that you loved and lost, an identity of your own that you loved and lost, honor it, befriend it. Befriend your ghost. Recognize and honor the special gift to this world of that person, and know that the veil will come down again. You will move on again, but your heart and the world will be a little more whole for having remembered. Rabbi David Wolpe took a trip across Scotland. He was walking, camping, hitchhiking. He was trying to learn the landscape and encounter people, but outside of the usual tourist venues and activities and attractions. But one of the areas he visited was Loch Ness, the body of water, the lake with the deepest water in Scotland, and famous, of course, for the sightings of the mythic Loch Ness monster. It can be an eerie place, one of mists and silence and haunting calls of nature. Perhaps one might imagine even ghosts, but a place of human longing and memory and love. One day, when Wolpe was just a little way from the famous lake, looking for a ride. Again, he was hiking and hitchhiking. An older woman stopped in her car to pick him up. But in a twist, she asked him to drive her car. He agreed, but as they started up, he asked her why. I always try to sit by the window that faces the lock. I was married for almost 50 years, and my husband was a great believer in the monster, a great believer. Myself, I never believed it, thought it was all nonsense. She paused. But now that he is gone, I watch the lock for him. She might be disguised to the world as a delusional monster watcher, but Wolpe knew his companion to be one who has seen the beauty of life, one who has loved, one with a broken heart, but a heart made more whole. Next week, we will do our remembering, but today we light the way. Even as the days grow short, may our hearts widen and grow more whole. And I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. Take your teal hymn supplement and turn to page 1066. We're going to sing "O Brother, Son." Let us remember those whose existence is seated in our lives today, not only those who are our physical descendants, but also those whose spirits inherit the love we sow, the hope we reap. Leslie Takahashi. Amen. Blessed be.